a lot of Muslims do have pensions.
Yeah.
A lot of Muslims may not know that they have pensions.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When did you set this up? Oh, yeah, maybe 15 years ago. It's just like, okay, crikey, it's probably worth quite a bit of money right now.
Yeah.
From doing nothing.
What's your response to people who would just opt out of a pension and say, I'd rather have the £100 now than maybe £200 in the future?
Yeah. The first question that I always ask is, why are you giving up free money?
Really?
Yeah. For
So
your
not only
£10,000 investment, it's only net cost to you is £6,000.
So not only have you been given that 2,000 there in the pension pot,
Yep.
you can claim back an additional 2,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the reaction that most people have is like, oh, hold on a minute, why haven't I been doing this?
Why isn't anyone doing Abul, listen, I've got £100,000. What, in your opinion, should I be doing with that money today?
So,
in today's episode, I'm joined by Abul Uddin, UK Head of Private Client Services for Wahid Invest, the world's largest Islamic fintech. We'll be doing a deep dive into his thoughts on UK Islamic finance, the problems that Muslims have with financial literacy, as well as what our hang-ups are when it comes to pensions. We're doing a bit of a deep dive into Sharia-compliant pensions. So stay tuned. We've got some very interesting tips and tricks about not leaving money on the table. As always, I'm your host, Areeb Siddiqui, and this is Muslim Money Talk. Before we begin, we actually noticed only about 10% of you are subscribed to the podcast. So if you like what you're listening to and you want to hear more from us and see more things Muslim and money related, then please consider subscribing and, of course, leaving this episode a like and share it with your friends, leave us a comment or a review, because it really, really does help us out and help more people to find us. Thank you. Now back to the show. Abul, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the show. It's been a long time coming.
wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair for having me.
This is the first time you've done a in-person podcast.
It is, yeah. Well, it's the first podcast I've ever done.
No, that's not true.
Oh, yeah, you're right. In person, yes.
Credit to
yes.
Jordan Maxwell
Yes.
and his podcast,
Shout
which I
out
think
to
was
Jordan.
Money and Me. I think it was.
So. Yeah.
I think you and I were both in the second season of that podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a very long time ago, subhanAllah.
2021, I think.
Was it 21?
22, yeah.
I think it was 20 during pandemic, if I'm not
Oh, maybe, yeah.
mistaken,
Yeah, I
actually.
think you're right. Right. Gosh, so
5
much has
years.
changed from then.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
Gosh, and I don't know if you remember how we first met.
I do. I
really?
remember it vividly. You was outside the Dutch Centre after Jummah.
Oh, okay. I'd forgotten about this.
Yeah. You were handing out leaflets asking for questionnaires in terms of just asking about banking and things like that.
Yeah.
And I took one of the leaflets and I was reading it and I was like, okay, this is super cool.
Mm.
Let me go and speak to this guy. And that's when you and I started speaking.
Oh my God. Okay. So
yeah.
my recollection was different.
Okay.
Because I remember what happened after that. So quite rightly, when Kestrl was at its inception stage, we used to stand outside of masjids after Jummah with our leaflets to do questionnaires, asking people about Islamic finance, their relation with money.
Yeah.
Do they care about Islamic finance? Were they using it? And that was the survey that found, okay, look, 95% of Muslims in the UK say they do care about growing their money in line with their beliefs, but fewer than 3% of people were doing anything about it. And that's was the beginning of Kestrl. But I remember when you invited us to your offices back when you were at Liverpool Street on top of the McDonald's.
Oh, okay,
and I met with you and Asad.
Asad, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Just to talk, I think,
Yeah.
about Islamic fintech,
Yeah,
potential collaborations.
Yes.
And alhamdulillah, I think Kestrl and Wahid have kind of been, you guys are like the big fish, and we're like the little fish that's just been swimming in your wake, I think.
I
so
wouldn't
far.
say that, but yeah, I wouldn't say that.
But you're one of the OGs. How has Wahid changed over the years?
Wahid's changed considerably. I think when I first joined Wahid, that was back in early May 2019.
Yeah.
There was a small office. We were actually in Aldgate. This was before
Oh,
Liverpool
really?
Street. Yeah.
Wow.
And there was three guys and two sisters, and that was it. That was the UK operation.
Because it was mainly in New York at the time.
So
Was
yeah,
that right?
so it was a UK business, US business primarily. So investment committee, finance, everybody was based in the US, and then we started in the UK in late summer 2018.
Wow.
So I joined a few months after that, and for me it was quite a stark difference because I'd come from an organisation where there was on a floor there was about 200 guys just on one floor, as part of a bank. And, the bank was a few thousand people. So it's quite a bit of a shock, a culture change.
Yeah, a shock to the system. It was like a proper startup environment
Literally,
you were thrust into.
Yeah, the whole company's based in one office. So
wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Wow. And now, mashallah, huge offices on Baker Street, internationally renowned, the world's largest Islamic fintech, I think has been the tagline for a while. And we'll come into the whole journey. But I wanted to go back to your early origins when it comes to money. And I think everyone has that first sort of memory about money when they realize its value and how, it doesn't just come easily. You can't rely on the bank of mum and dad any longer. Do you have that memory?
I do. It's actually something that I talked about on Jordan's podcast as well. And so up until I passed my driving test, bank of mum and dad, well, bank of dad really, paid for everything, schooling, clothes, food, whatever I wanted. And then, and we'd always talked about passing my driving test.
Sure.
And getting a car and things like that. And this was freedom for me. And obviously it's a badge of honor, getting your own car and things like that. So I remember Dad taking me out a few weekends, and we checked out a few different cars, and I'd set my sights on a Golf GTI. I'm 18 years old. Golf GTI back then was a lot of money, even as a second-hand car. And I was just like, yep, that's what I want. I'm 18 years old, hadn't got a clue about anything. And so at the end of it, I was like, right, Dad, that's the one that I want. And he's like, great. He's really, really excited. I was just like, yes, fantastic. And he went, so how are you going to pay for it? And I was just like, you're going to pay? No, I'm not going to pay for it. You're 18 now. And, come to that realization that actually, do you know what? And him reminding me that when he was a child, coming to the UK with literally nothing. And for me to then expect as an adult, because I was 18 years old, to have the same, that's not going to happen. He will support me, but I'm going to have to stand on my own 2 feet, especially if I want this big flashy car.
Yeah.
And so it was coming to that realization that actually this is not going to happen. So I ended up with a Volvo 340D instead of the Golf GTI, because that's what I could afford at the time. And that
fantastic.
was it.
Yeah, okay, so that really taught you, instilled that early idea of money in you. Has that changed how you deal or speak about money to your children today? Do
you know what? If I'm honest with you, my attitude towards money has changed, but it's changed more so since getting married, if I'm honest with you. Yeah. My wife, bless her for putting up with me for nearly 20 years now.
Mashallah, wow.
She's very, very good with money.
Okay.
Like the saying goes, cobblers in their shoes. So even though I've been in finance for nearly 25 years, she's the one who's got a very firm grasp on finance in the house.
Okay.
And budgeting and things like that. A lot of what I've learned in terms of budgeting and things like that, it's actually come from her over the last 20 years. So even though I'd been in finance for a good 10 years before we got, 5-6 years before we got married, it was she who taught me a lot about how to budget, managing my money and things like that.
Your wife's not in financial services?
No. She's just, mashallah, she's just been brought up, with a very keen understanding and appreciation for money.
That's so interesting.
So alhamdulillah, a lot of what the kids learn, as well as me, has come from my wife.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay. Do you, in your day job, we're jumping all over the place here, but in your day job, do you notice that difference between the way men and women approach money? Do you think men are more like prone to taking risks and cavalier, and women are better at budgeting and saving?
Yeah. I think that's just our nature as well. The mother is the safety, the safe haven, the caregiver, and men are hunter gatherers by nature and things like that. So it's in our DNA to take a little bit more risk, and I think for the vast majority of us, I think men still are the main breadwinners in the house. And so perhaps a little bit is, well, actually I'm earning, money's coming in every month and things like that. And so therefore I can afford to take a little bit more risk. Whereas women may not always have that option. But they're just a little bit more cautious. They're more slower to make a financial decision. But once they've made it, it's more sticky in terms of
Way more committed.
They're far more committed
Wow.
to what they want to do.
Okay.
Men are a little bit more fickle, jump from one thing to another.
We can talk about the psychology of money. I feel like that's a whole different chapter and podcast. But how did you find your way into private banking?
Interesting. So I went to university, did a financial services degree. I think I realized from a very early age that if I want to make money, then you need to get into finances, and that was the case. In the 80s, 90s, that's where everybody wanted to earn money. It was in finance, so that was just a knock-on for me. So I did a financial services degree, and at the same time, I started working in a bank as a cashier in a building society.
Oh, really? During university?
Yeah. During university.
To save up for that goal?
Well, yes, but also to build up experience.
Okay.
Obviously, being from an Asian background, father first generation Asian in the UK. I'm the first generation who was born in the UK. We didn't have that background in terms of being educated and having that safety net of a professional network that you could leverage. So I knew that I would need to get in somewhere to build up my CV, because up until then, helping out at my dad's Indian takeaway.
Oh, really?
The weekends, that's all I had on my CV. That's why I went into securing a part-time job while I was at university to build up that CV, so that once I've graduated, I then have a reasonable experience, which is going to be really important for me.
Okay. And you spent, I think, was it the best part of 20 years? Working for private banks?
No, so not just private banking. So I started off as cashier. I've been in finance for 25 years. So most of that has been in wealth management. So managing clients. Certainly the last 15, 16 years has been in doing exactly that. Actually, it's a lot longer than that. SubhanAllah, just thinking about it. But yeah, most of it has been. But yeah, started off as a cashier, worked my way up into branch management, financial advisory, then got a good break into working at HSBC as a senior relationship manager in their high net worth, retail banking high net worth division.
Okay. So you were dealing with like very rich people?
Yeah, so minimum ticket size was like 250, £500,000, up to about £5-6 million.
And what were you doing? So for people who don't know, for a relationship manager for these high net worth type individuals, what are you doing for them?
So you're just essentially you are the main point of contact for anything that the client has with regards to the bank. You take care of everything from their lending needs, their savings needs, their investment needs, anything that they need from a banking perspective. You're there to be that point of contact, like, be that conduit.
Abul, there's a penthouse that I want to get, and can you arrange some financing for me quite quickly? Yeah. That kind of thing would be like a typical.
More or less, yeah. And in the early days, I was able to underwrite a lot of the mortgages myself, so it didn't need to go to an underwriter or anything.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. So this is part and parcel of that world.
Okay.
This is and so credit crunch changed a lot of that. So they took a lot of that away, and they had separate underwriters managing the risk better and things like that. But yeah, we were able to underwrite some of up to certain levels.
Wow.
But yeah, you could just do it for your client.
It seems like a very, mashallah, comfortable position that you had attained within, I guess, for all intents and purposes, conventional financial services. And then you found yourself moving to Islamic Finance, Islamic Fintech. Yeah. How did that jump happen? What motivated it?
It was, so I went Hajj in 2015, alhamdulillah. And I was very fortunate to go Hajj with Sheikh Haytham and Sheikh Farid Haybatan with the Amana boys. And so it was at that stage that, I was starting to get a lot more serious about my deen and things like that. My wife said, look, if you wipe the slate clean, go Hajj. She's, I'm very fortunate that she had already done Hajj before we got married. She said, just go and do it. After doing that, it was at that stage that the whole, Sheikh Haytham was giving a talk one evening, and he was just like, right, it's great that you're here and you want to, ask for forgiveness and things like that, but don't go home to continue to wage a war with Allah and his messenger. And if I'm honest with you, I've been taught about a lot of this when I was younger, as most of us are, right? But I'd moved away from that lifestyle and things like that. Things had changed for me, and so I'd forgotten a lot of that. It was at that stage that being reminded about that, and this was a real culture change for me, and it came as quite of a shock. But coming back, I was like, right, I'm going to do something about this, and then lo and behold, I get a job offer to become a proper, full-on private banker with a private bank. So no longer just looking after retail high net worth clients, you're actually in the private bank. So I took it, subhanAllah. And the lifestyle, Shaitan, fully knew what he was getting with me, and lifestyle, all of the trappings which came with it, I took advantage of. But it's only when I made that transition that over a period of time that I realized that actually this isn't right. So the seed that Sheikh Haytham had planted had started to blossom while I was there.
Really?
You're dealing with ultra high net worth people and serious sums of money. But yeah, slowly, it just started eating at me more and more, that actually what I'm doing isn't right. But it took a conversation with my son, and somebody, my son was quite young at the time. As naturally, when you speak to a young boy, what do you want to do when you're older? That was the question he was asked. He just said, yeah, I want to be a banker like my dad. That was his default, without even thinking about it. Now it would be like, yeah, anything but my dad, right? He's a teenager, but at the time he was, dad was still the hero and things like that. And you know how it is, right?
Yeah.
With your own kids.
My boy's still, he's only 2.5.
Exactly,
so
exactly right. You're everything, right? Cherish these times, honestly. And for me, it was having that conversation, and I've always taught my kids, don't do as I do, but do as I say. Try to do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our parents wanted for us as well, right? So it was having that conversation that actually banking is not good. It's not, as Muslims, we should try to do better. So simple question from him was, why do you do it then? And I think that was trying to find a justification to your child, which was, what hit home really for me. And it was after that I made the sincere niyyah that, I'm out.
SubhanAllah. Wow. Yeah. Conversation with your son literally altered the course of your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah. So then how did you find Wahid? Did they reach out to you?
So 6 months. So I left banking without a job to go to.
Wow. So you just walked in and said, that's it.
No.
I'm leaving.
Qadr of Allah, I made the niyyah that I'm leaving.
Okay.
This is coming up to the end of 2018.
Okay.
I was on leave at the time, and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to see out my... I'm expecting a bonus come, January, April, March time, something like that.
Yeah.
I'll be told about what my bonus is, get paid before the end of the tax year, and then I'll go, right? I'll give my notice and then I'll leave. That was the plan. First day back, manager calls me in. Good news, bad news. Bad news, bonuses are cut in half. Good news is I can offer you voluntary redundancy. And for me,
really?
that was I regarded that as a sign. Allah had accepted my niyyah.
This is
and
it.
He's just shown me an easy way out. He's not.
Allah.
You don't have to wait.
Wow.
And that was it. And so I didn't have a job to go to. That was a 2019 plan, right? Get your bonus awarded and then start looking for a job, and you'll get that by the time your notice period is up. So that was the plan. And so no job to go to, early December, and I thought, okay, so this is a sign, great. And so alhamdulillah, once I'd said, I'm open for new roles and things like that. I wasn't short of job offers. Alhamdulillah, my CV.
Yeah, of course, it speaks for itself.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. And so, but the question that I was asking every single recruiter was like, or every company that I was interviewing with, do you have a Sharia solution? Do you have something? And I thought, even if there isn't a Sharia-compliant business out there, and remember, this is 2018, right? So Islamic Finance was only for the lawyers.
Yeah.
Right? Or the investment bankers.
It was very nascent. And retail Islamic banking had kind of come and gone.
Yeah, I mean, literally one recruiter just said, yeah, good luck trying to find that needle in the haystack. I mean, literally it was non-existent.
But you found the needle.
I did. I mean, Wahed was, I'd been hearing about Wahed because obviously they'd just launched in the US and things like that. And I've been following that. And obviously, I do keep a keen eye on these kind of things, being in banking. But the fact that they had come to the UK, I hadn't got a clue. I mean, they'd, I wasn't looking at managing my own personal finance, so I didn't need to go online to research and all of that. I just knew the providers that I wanted and just invested, right? So I wasn't doing the research to find Wahed and find out Wahed had been in the UK. So it was 6 months of looking for a job and trying to find maybe even a niche, right? And having interviewed a number of different places, the first organization which said, yeah, we don't have a Sharia solution, but we're thinking about it, I thought, brilliant. And at this stage, I knew I wasn't going back into banking. And I thought, okay, asset management, just managing client wealth is where I wanted to be. It's not as bad as lending people money. Right? Yeah. But something was still niggling in the back of my head that, look, you're still dealing with interest-based products and things like that, even managing wealth, but there's nothing else out there.
Yeah.
And, I'm coming up to my 40s at this stage in 2019. So, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, I can't restart my career. I can't do something else completely different, right? Nearly 20 years of doing this now. I can't mix it with 20-something-year-olds. I'm far too old for that. So I thought, okay, this will be the solution. So, alhamdulillah, the interviews were going very well, and second or third round interview, the commercial manager, he's a commercial director, should I say, he's actually showing me around the building, introducing me to staff. This is Abul, hopefully he's going to be joining us. I thought, this is brilliant. This is absolutely fantastic. And the fact that this is the first organization which said, we're looking at a Sharia-compliant solution. It's only reflecting at home, and I was thinking, well, hold on a minute. Just because they're saying that right now, and I know what banks are like, and I remember I've worked at HSBC when they had the Amana range and they pulled it and all of that. They could drop it at the drop of a hat,
Absolutely.
Right? It reminded me of a conversation that I had with my previous private bank when I was there, and I was looking after Muslim clients. I was very fortunate to look after a few Muslim footballers at the time.
Wow.
And they had a lot of money sitting there doing nothing, and my job was to get them to invest it. And I'd be doing an even better job if I could get them to borrow money from me and then invest that even further, right? That was the name of the game. And so I took that to the board of directors. I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. Maybe I can carve out a little niche for myself within this business. Just look, I was one of 2 or 3 Muslims in the whole business. So I thought maybe I can just carve out a little niche. So any Muslim which comes along, send them over to Abul and that'll be the end of it. And they said, yeah, not a problem. You could do that, but you need to give us about £250 million if you want to do that. It's just like, okay, what the hell do we do? So, and even these guys, I mean, yes, they're wealthy. They've got a few £1 million sitting in the bank account, but not 250 million. And so this is where the whole journey just started off. And I thought, well, these guys, it may or may not happen, right? And if it doesn't happen and they don't offer something Sharia compliant, am I happy to stay there?
You'll be back at square one,
right,
basically.
Exactly,
the reason you wanted to leave in the first place.
Exactly. And so for me, one morning it was going positive, and I thought, just make dua to Allah, after Salah one morning, and I just said, Ya Allah, if it's meant for me and it's acceptable to you, make it easy for me. If it's not, show me another route. And subhanAllah, within 5 minutes of making that dua, I get an email to say Wahed is looking for somebody with my background and my CV matches 8% of their requirements. Do you want to apply?
Within 5 minutes of making that dua.
Alhamdulillah.
Incredible.
Alhamdulillah.
Incredible. And you've been now at Wahed for 6 years now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
this is your 6th year.
This will be coming up to my 6th year.
MashaAllah.
7th Ramadan.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
As the head of private clients.
So I just started off as business development manager, talking to all clients, and I still do.
Okay.
But given my background, what we started to find was that actually, alhamdulillah, we had quite a number of wealthy families coming to us and wanting to invest in a Sharia compliant way.
Okay.
And so because of my experience, I just naturally gravitated towards looking after them and guiding them as to the kind of things that we can do, but also just talking to them generally about financing, because a lot of these guys, they're used to making wealth, but what do you do with it?
What do you do with it once? Yeah, you just put it in the bank. What we see at Kestrl, a lot of our customers are just putting money into a current account and not doing anything with it.
Exactly.
That's so interesting. So I wanted to ask as well, firstly, for our listeners who didn't check out the fantastic episode we did with Umar Sulaiman.
Yes.
Over a few months ago now. It was one of our first episodes, so do check that out. But what is Wahid in like one or two lines?
Wahid is a digital investment platform which takes the headache away from the everyday Muslim from making investment decisions. We offer numerous different types of accounts that you can utilize, but the key thing is it's a way for you to grow your wealth in a Sharia-compliant way.
Thank you for listening to Muslim Money Talk. If you like what you've heard so far, you might be interested in checking out what we do at Kestrl, the Muslim Money app. Kestrl is a service that helps Muslims who want to grow their wealth without having to compromise, whether it's on their belief or user experience or price. I founded Kestrl because of how fed up I was at how poor Islamic financial services were in this country. Often people didn't use them because of how bad the user experience or customer service, and indeed how high on price they were. So Kestrl was the answer to that. If you download the Kestrl app today, it can help you by creating a budgeting plan. Plug in whatever bank account you have and it will create an auto budget just for you. You can then tell us what goals you're saving for and we'll save towards them automatically into pots, and then crucially link you towards Sharia-compliant investment and savings products as well. So download Kestrl today and try it out for yourself. Now back to the podcast. Okay, and you offer a range of different products from investing into ETFs, pensions, venture fund as well. Kestrl, ourselves at Kestrl, we raised through your fund too.
One of our most successful ones as
Alhamdulillah,
well.
yeah, it's been very good, and we look forward to raising with you guys again in the future, inshallah. But I remember you once telling me that before you'd kind of avoided dealing with like the South Asian community and perhaps the Muslim community in some way with your in your previous career.
Yeah.
So was it a bit of a culture shock when it came to suddenly now dealing almost exclusively with Muslim and I imagine mainly South Asian customers? What were the main differences?
So I think what you got to think about is the mindset, right? Now, I was used to at that stage dealing with a lot of, European, white English, generational wealth. So these are people who are accustomed to managing money and investing, and knowing the benefits and wanting to take advantage of that. I think for the South Asian community, most were only ever interested in borrowing money. It wasn't actually to invest. It wasn't to create wealth from their own wealth. They're only, what I've experienced up until that stage was, the only way I can make money is actually I can borrow money and then buy property. Yeah. And that was it.
Property gold. That's it.
Okay. Exactly. And so that is, for me, it was like, well, actually, there's more out there, and actually it's more tax efficient. And when you start talking about this kind of stuff, they're just like, tax? You're going to report me to the tax man? Or And it's just like, oh, God, it's quite a hard conversation to have.
So there was like an educational barrier around sometimes 100%. More basic financial literacy, I guess how comfortable they were with different investment asset classes as well, beyond just property or gold. And did you find there was like a skepticism towards you guys because you were saying you were Islamic or Sharia?
Sharia, Islamic, as well as investments into the stock market.
In general.
Yeah.
Fun.
A lot of people had seen the .com bubble. A lot of people more recently had been thinking about the credit crunch and things like that. So all of that was still very, fresh in people's minds, which is what causes people to and rightly so, to be a little bit apprehensive.
Sure. But do you feel like Muslims have more of a problem with money? Do you think we get in our own way?
No, I think what you've got to remember, I wouldn't say we have a problem with money. And what you've got to remember is that, subhanAllah, we're probably the largest wealth creator in the ethnic minority communities today, which is growing the most. right? Look around all the entrepreneurs. You, for example, and Wahed, and there's other institutions out there, but also restaurants, businesses, other kind of ways of creating wealth. So I don't think it's that. But what you've got to think about is in the UK, generally, the UK general population financial literacy is quite poor. Yeah, and then when you look at the ethnic minorities, Muslims then fall to the bottom of that. Why? Because most finance-related stuff is interest-related. So generally, a lot of Muslims stay away from it. Yeah, and the only ones that they think is okay is borrowing money, right? That's the only thing. Everything else is like, no, I can't touch it. And so that is what I've seen as a problem. But also, like you said, property gold. And that's, a generational thing again. When my father came over, growing up, I remember a lot of money was sent back home. It wasn't invested here.
Yeah, of course.
It was sent back home to support a wider... what you've got to remember is that generation, my dad was one of 5 siblings. And he was the first to come to the UK with his father, right? And so everybody else relied on them. And so this is what happened. And so, I was brought up with not any real substantial wealth being kept here. It was all shipped back home.
Yeah.
And so that was, I think, the problem. Now I think, as I've got older, we're a little bit more established here now.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've got the ability to create wealth here now. And I think that's the stage that we're at. And, the 6 years that I've been doing this, it's been phenomenal to see the mindset change.
Just in the 6 years?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, think of it this way, right? 6 years ago, I was looking for a job in Islamic finance. There wasn't an Islamic finance provider out there that could offer me a job. 6 years later, how many Islamic finance providers are out there for the everyday Muslim to use? Why?
Demand.
Exactly. That only comes from understanding, educating, and things like that. So it's phenomenal what we've been able to achieve in 6 short years. And I think that is really, really exciting for the future for our community.
SubhanAllah. I hadn't thought about it like that, but we've been doing this since 2020. So kind of like following you guys in parallel, but SubhanAllah, it has changed. It has changed. A lot of people, I remember in the early days, some people have fallen away, and I think that's natural in any kind of industry, but there are still quite a few of us who are still here, establishing and growing.
Exactly.
So alhamdulillah, that's a really good way of looking at it. So I wanted to bring us to, I guess, the crux of the topic we wanted to talk about today, which is pensions. A big part of your role is now in getting people to sign up to Sharia-compliant pensions offered through the Wahed platform. I wanted to ask you how that's been and what exactly is a Sharia-compliant pension.
First of all, Sharia compliance means that there's certain criterias that a particular investment needs to meet in order to be deemed to be Sharia compliant. So, and the scholars at AOFI, they set these rules, and many of your listeners will probably be familiar with them. But essentially, there's 2 key financial criteria. One is debt to equity, and the other is impermissible income. So as long as a stock meets those 2 requirements, as well as not being, arms manufacturers or a bank or an alcohol producer, it's Sharia compliant. So it's taking that simple understanding and applying it to the investment universe, which will make something Sharia compliant. So that's pretty easy, right? The hard part comes in trying to navigate what's the right thing to invest into. And so here at Wahed, we have an investment committee, headed by Samim Bedi. He joined us from Google. He managed over $45 billion at Google. Prior to that, I was at JP Morgan, managing over $100 billion.
Incredible.
That makes my $100 million as a private banker. That's paling to insignificant. As Ibrahim once said, it's a rounding error, right? 100 million is a rounding error for somebody like Samim. So
Samim's based in New York, isn't he?
He is, yeah. So and the rest of the investment committee. So when you've got people like that who are constructing portfolios and undertaking the reviews,
the due diligence.
Yeah, exactly. To make sure that these are not only Sharia compliant but also fit for purpose, and they stand up to scrutiny. Forget the Sharia compliance. And so my aspiration for the business is, and this is how we see it, is we're a very good asset management company. We're managing investments on behalf of clients in a very, very good way. We just happen to be Sharia compliant as well.
So how are you noticing Muslims are dealing with their pensions today? Do you find that most of them have pensions?
A lot of Muslims do have pensions.
Yeah.
A lot of Muslims may not know that they have pensions.
Really?
Yeah. So people that I speak to, they are employed, and legislation has meant that they've been enforced to have a pension scheme set up for them. So most people that I speak to have some kind of pension. It's just they haven't contributed because they thought, I can do something better with my money. I'd rather have £100 in my pocket rather than £200 in a pension scheme for myself. For a lot of people, that's actually the case. But legislation meant that their employer wouldn't still need to pay in or something like that. Or they're very fortunate to be able to do that. More recently, you have to pay in as well under auto-enrollment rules. But previously, there was non-contributory pension schemes. So people have pension schemes set up doing nothing, and they weren't even aware.
Wow.
Or I've never paid into it, so I don't know whether it's worth anything or not. I've never really taken any note. And when did you set this up? Maybe 15 years ago. It's just like, okay, crikey, it's probably worth quite a bit of money right now from doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of people do actually have them. A lot of people don't. And what you'll find is those who are lower income earners, the gig economy and things like that. Even myself, when I first started in finance, I opted out of my pension because I thought I'd much rather have that extra £60 in my pay packet at the end of the month. But alhamdulillah, now we're a lot more comfortable, and disposable income has increased and things like that. So now, yes, you can have pensions, and I think that's the journey that most people have gone on. But as you get older and your income bracket increases and things like that, you then have more substantial pension pots.
What's your response to people who would just opt out of a pension and say, I'd rather have the £100 now than maybe £200 in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I see it a lot. And, the first question that I always ask is, why are you giving up free money? And most people are like, what? What do you mean free money? It's £100. It's my £100. I get to keep it. No. Okay, so look, if you pay into a pension scheme, by law, your employer is obligated to pay into a pension scheme as well. So if your employer is obligated to pay into a pension scheme, that part that they're paying in is free money as far as you're concerned. It's not your money, it's theirs that they have to pay in.
And it's part of your contract that they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. If you stop paying into a pension scheme, they don't say, thank you very much for opting out. Here's that extra bit of money that they're no longer obligated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so therefore, they're not going to give you that instead. Right?
Okay. So
they're not a charity.
But when it comes to Sharia compliant options available right now, aside from yourself and I think HSBC, I don't think there are any Sharia compliant pension solutions out there. Do you think there's enough options at the moment?
So there's loads of options, right?
Okay.
But just very limited. So what I mean by loads of options? So vast majority of any person who has a pension scheme will have a Sharia solution.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether you're with Aviva, Scottish Widows, Prudential, Nest, they will have a Sharia compliant solution for you. But that Sharia compliant solution is very limited. It's one fund. It's the HSBC Islamic Global Equity Index fund.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So every single pension company out there does offer it. And that's what I've experienced so far. The issue comes when you're 20s, 30s like you, fine, right? Having one fund, pure equity, fine. But when you get into your mid-40s like I am, and you're thinking, well, actually, retirement's only 10 years away now for me, that's when you start to think, well, actually, I don't want to be carrying all of that risk. Okay, certainly for the next 5 years, I'm fine still. But in the next 5 years, I want to be de-risking, so reducing volatility within my investment, right? These are my life-saving, quote unquote, as a pension. And that's not available anywhere. So it's only when Wahed started offering workplace pensions and personal pensions through the SIP product that we started to be able to give the average person the ability to diversify. And still have something managed. And that's the important part. A lot of people talk about, oh, you can do it yourself and this, that, the other. Great. Yes, you can. All the funds that we invest into, you can invest into yourself. But how many of us actually have the time, knowledge, or inclination?
So let me just break this down, just so I'm fully understanding it. Before, wherever you're working at, maybe you're working at a Google or JP Morgan or wherever else, you sign up to that workplace pension scheme. You'll say to them, listen, I'm Muslim, I want a Sharia-compliant option. They say, fine. There's only one fund available, it's HSBC.
Yeah.
Now, Wahed has created a different fund, but it's not just a single fund, it's one which is more diversified. And I guess the main difference between this one and HSBC's, which is primarily equity-based, higher returns, but also quite risky, is that this one has some more, I guess, lower returns, but less risky assets in there, like Sukuk or a Sharia-compliant bond type product.
Yeah.
Within those.
Yeah.
So can you choose your different risk level and say, I want something which is higher return, but I understand is a bit more risky, or lower risk, lower return with Wahed?
Exactly.
Okay.
So first of all, it's not a fund.
Okay.
Although Wahed does have its own fund,
Yeah.
it's a portfolio.
Okay.
So the technical term is a managed portfolio service. That's exactly what Wahed provides.
What's the difference?
So the difference is a portfolio can be made up of different funds,
I see.
right?
Okay.
Or you do in different asset classes and things like that.
Sure.
Whereas a fund typically does one thing.
Okay.
And investing into one particular type of asset class,
Say like tech stocks.
or S&P 500,
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's just one index or one type of investment. You're only investing into stocks. You can have fund of funds, but what a fund of funds does is exactly what a portfolio does. Is it's one fund, but then that one fund owns underlying funds, right?
Okay.
So obviously at that stage when we first launched here, we weren't a fund provider, and so we couldn't do that. So we're a portfolio service provider as well.
So it's a
But the only difference is
portfolio made up of other people's funds.
funds, yeah,
Fine.
Exactly.
Which are all inherently Sharia compliant.
yes.
Fine. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the starting place. What that gives you is the ability to choose different risk levels, and the proportions that we invest into different funds, which then gives exposure to particular asset classes, will be determined by the level of risk you're taking. So the more risky, the very aggressive, the more of it's allocated towards stocks, global stocks as well as emerging markets. The less risky you are, more of it's invested into sukuk.
So these funds which are in the portfolio,
Yep.
it's beyond just HSBC. So why weren't the Avivas of the world offering access to these before and just saying, here's HSBC? That's it.
Avivas are. And that's the problem. It's just, that's all they're offering.
Okay.
Right. So for the conventional investment houses out there, pension companies, it's a tick box exercise for them. Right. We need to offer the Muslims in our workforce a Sharia option. So here you go. But their default option is what they offer to everybody, including the Muslim, when they first go into it. It's called a lifestyle managed option, which means that as you get older, risk is taken off the table, right? So they move you from riskier assets when you've got the timeline to ride out the volatility to stuff which is less volatile, closer to when you need access to the money. That's exactly what you should be doing with your money.
Yeah.
So pension companies do this day in, day out. But as soon as you say, I'm Muslim and I want something Sharia compliant, all of that goes out the window. You no longer have any of that. You only have one equity-only fund. And so therefore, when you were 64 and a half in late 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and you were planning to retire in the first 6 months of 2020, that went out the window. Why? Because you were carrying equity-only risk. And if you was invested in that one fund, you carried that risk. Whereas Joe Bloggs, who was in their lifestyle managed, all of that risk was taken off the table for him 2 or 3 years before.
That's crazy to think, because if you are at that point retiring at the point of a financial crisis, you would have seen a huge dip in the value of your pension.
Yeah.
Of your pension pot. There's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
In that case, were you dealing with clients who were in that position at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we still are. I mean, we're in another period of volatility right now.
Of course.
Not as extreme, but 10% is still 10% down generally. But yeah, we do speak to these kind of clients every single day. I was just talking to somebody just the other day. He's saying, I've lost best part of £200,000 from my investment portfolio. That's 10% for them, right? So that's quite substantial.
Yeah.
But it is still 10%. And what you've got to remind them is that, look, okay, it's down, but what does that actually mean for you right now? Is that your goal? Do you need access to the money right now? If you need access to the money, then what we should have been doing is having a conversation about de-risking long before that. And by de-risking, I mean reducing volatility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what at Wahed we do when we're talking to our clients and things like that.
So through your pension products, you can do that de-risking.
So our workplace pension actually does exactly the same as what Joe Bloggs gets at work. Yeah, they fully lifestyle manage. You don't ever need to make that decision for yourself if you didn't want to.
Yeah,
and that's in partnership with a master trust provider called Smart Pensions. Do that.
Okay, yeah.
But we have a personal pension product.
Yeah.
So a workplace pension is usually your employer sets it up, and so you're then limited to whatever investment choices the investment house has.
Yes.
That your employer's chosen. The personal pension or self-invested personal pension, you get to choose. So you can choose to have one with Wahed, and then you get to choose the level of risk or the level of volatility that you would face within your investment.
But your employer won't pay into your personal one, but they would into a workplace one.
Employers can. Okay. Most employers won't.
I see.
Admin.
Really?
Yeah. So the person who's managing payroll, if they had even 5 members of staff at the end of each payroll month saying, pay into my private pension scheme, it's just going to add to their admin headache.
So would the way forward, say there's someone listening to this right now who's like, that sounds great, I want to sign up to that product. Could they go to their employer and say, listen, this company, Wahed, in partnership with Smart Pensions, have this workplace pension. Can we onboard them in some way? Is that an option for them?
Yeah, 100%. We speak to potential employers all the time with that exactly in mind. What a lot of them may do is turn around and say, well, actually, why am I doing this for such a small segment of my workforce?
Employee population,
Does my current employer offer a Sharia solution? So then we get back to that tick box, right? So what we found is that it's actually the Muslim employers who need to make that change on behalf of their staff. So the ones where there is a Muslim majority or the employer, i.e. self-employed, they're Muslim, they're the ones who we approach.
And are you seeing large uptake from Muslim employers?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. We've had some really positive uptake in terms of the product. More can be done. Pensions, if I'm honest with you, is the last thing any employer wants to think about or anything like that. For a lot of us, from a personal wealth perspective as well, it's probably not high on the agenda. But when you start to delve into the tax benefits, going back to what you're saying about the free money and all of that kind of stuff, when you start to delve into it, people start to take it very seriously once they get their head around actually what it can benefit.
Tell me about those. What are the tax benefits of paying into a pension?
So tax benefits, if you pay into a workplace pension scheme, right, through your employer, pension contributions are deducted from your salary before income tax or national insurance is applied. So you get taxed on what's left. Right, so you're saving not only income tax, but the national insurance as well. Most people forget about the national insurance. That's still about 10% something like that. I can't remember. And then from an employer's perspective, you paying into a pension scheme is a good incentive for employee loyalty. Yeah, you're paying into something that they're benefiting from, but also it's a cost for your business. So it's discounted against your corporation tax, but also it's discounted against your business employer NI as well.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So as an employer, there's a lot of benefit to you, which is why employers pay in, which is why a lot of employers who are big enough, they actually say, if you pay in more, we'll pay in more as well. Because that NI saving that they're making, they can afford to then pass on.
Incredible.
And then that just, again, builds to employee loyalty as well.
No, absolutely. And I think putting it in that way to the employee side of it, that ultimately you're paying less tax.
Yeah.
And the money is just being saved for later.
Yeah.
And it is there being stored, but you're paying less income tax at the end of the
Exactly.
day. Okay. I think that's the kind of like next level thinking when it comes to our money that we're lacking today.
Yeah. And personal pensions as well. So if you have missed the boat with work or something like that, or if you want to do something in addition to that, any contributions you're making into a pension scheme, you'll get whatever you pay in from your personal savings, you'll get 25% back into the pension scheme. All right. So 25% of your contributions is added back in by the administrator. So it's claimed back from the taxman. Now, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, so let's say, for example, $8,000, you pay in £8,000 into a personal pension scheme.
So I'm a gig economy worker.
Yep.
I'm working for myself.
Yep.
I pay in £8,000 into the Wahid personal pension scheme.
Into any personal pension. Forget the Wahid label for a second here. Any personal pension. The administrator, the SIP administrator, will claim back £2,000. That works out to be 25% of what you've paid in. $8,000, yeah? $2,000 is 25% of $8,000.
Where are they claiming that from?
From HMRC.
Okay.
Yeah, from the taxman. We're getting this back. So that your $8,000, lo and behold, becomes £10,000 before it's even been invested.
Wow.
In your pension. So you got a 25% uplift on what you've paid in. Now, 2,000 is actually 20% of the 10, which is the basic rate relief. This is how HMRC perceives it. So they look at the 10,000, they've given you back 2, that's 20%, which is your basic rate of tax. Then on your tax return, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, you can claim back the remaining £2,000 on your tax return. So this is brilliant. So now you've got 40% relief. So for your £10,000 investment, it's only net cost to you is £6,000.
So not only have you been given that 2,000 there in the pension pot, you can claim back an additional 2,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the reaction that most people, when they start to actually talk about it, that's the reaction that most people have is like, oh, hold on a minute, why haven't I been doing this?
Why isn't anyone doing
Exactly. And when you then say to them, well, actually, do you know your pension allowance is actually 3 times what your ISA allowance is each year? So between both of them, your ISA and your pensions, you actually have £80,000 potentially as an allowance each year.
Wow.
It's phenomenal.
So, and both of those products are offered by Wahid.
Yeah.
The ISA and the pension.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Exactly.
So are you quite optimistic about the future then? With all of these products out there, you're working at the forefront of one of the largest Islamic fintechs in the world. How do you see the future of this landscape?
I think the future is very exciting. If you look at, going back to what I was saying earlier, 6 years ago, there wasn't anything. We've got people like Kestrl, innovating in terms of digitalizing banking.
Yeah.
You've got institutions like Wahid who are creating, investment products which the everyday person can use.
Yeah.
The type of products. When I first joined Wahid, we offered an ISA and a general investment account. That was it. Today, we offer personal pensions, workplace pensions, ISAs, general investments, charity accounts, business accounts, real estate crowdfunding, venture capital crowdfunding. And that's just in the last couple of years, most of this has come about. It's phenomenal and it's really, really exciting. We look after, we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the number of users we have in terms of compared to the UK population of Muslims. So it's very, very exciting. There's a huge growth potential.
Incredible. SubhanAllah. It's always really heartening to hear that, especially when you're coming up against some of the skepticism from just the general UK Muslim population. And, they've been burned before, so there's some of that there.
And rightly so, they should be skeptical.
Yeah, of course. But now I think we're starting to get past that and seeing more and more of an adoption. So I guess to finish this off, because we're a little bit short on time, if someone were to give you, or if I called you up, Abul, listen, I've got £100,000. What, in your opinion, should I be doing with that money today?
So,
and this isn't financial advice.
100%.
But this is just a hypothetical scenario.
Hypothetical. Yeah. I think I always start off this conversation is, okay, what are you hoping this money does for you? What's your objective here? When do you think you will want to access this money? And do you perceive that there may be liquidity events that you need along that way as well?
So in response, in this hypothetical scenario, my horizon's about 20 years. I want to save up, I think, for my children's education. Liquidity events, I don't want it 100% locked away, sealed tight, but I'm not expecting any liquidity events from this amount of money. So it's a longer term investment. But if I need the money, worst case scenario, I would like to draw down.
Yeah. So this is where now, by asking these questions, what I'm doing is actually establishing your investment needs. But then your responses is leading to then for us to understand what your capacity for investment risk is. So you've got a long timeline, 20 years.
Yeah.
You don't need it. This is money that you're comfortable putting aside because it's for something specific in 20 years' time.
Yep.
And so your capacity for investment risk is actually quite high. Yeah, you've already told me this is money that I don't need. So if it were to drop in value, again, you don't need it. So you've got the timeline now to ride that drop. And so therefore your capacity for investment risk is high. So you can afford to go for things which are more going to be volatile, like stocks, but also maybe because you've got the timeline now as well and you've got the sum of money, you can now start to think about venture capital investment or private equity as well, alongside that to complement. Probably if you're new to this, no more than about 10% of your overall wealth should go into this kind of area. But it's more illiquid, but that illiquidity, risk and reward go hand in glove. It means that actually that small part could actually blow the returns compared to the rest of it.
It could be the bulk of your returns.
100%, 100%. But equally, it could be nothing.
You could lose everything.
Which is why we say, think about no more than about 10%. But
Sure.
You should be thinking more long-term, 20 years, equity or equity-like investments. Those are the kind of things, more volatility within my portfolio. But when your 20 years becomes 5 years, that's when you want to take risk off the table. That's when you want to reduce from pure equity down to something which is going to have more safety security, like sukuks or real estate or something like that, which is going to be a little bit more stable. So you've locked in the profits from the previous 15 years and then reduced the likelihood of losing those profits as well as the rest of the money.
Understood.
Understood. And as you get closer and closer to needing access to the money, this is exactly what pension companies do, believe it or not. As you get closer and closer, you're just taking more and more risk off the table so that when you're 6 months away, maybe it's all sitting in cash. I don't know. Or like you said, like I was talking to a client this morning, I can draw what I need to, but I can leave the rest of the money invested. So you could do that as well. So the world is your oyster. All of these kind of things are open to you. And that's the beauty of having a SIP and things like that. Yeah. You've got the choice. And alhamdulillah, today we've got, the world really is, for us as Muslims, the world is our oyster. We have so many opportunities and so many choices to invest in.
SubhanAllah, what a beautiful way to end the episode. Abul, if people are interested in finding out more about you and about Wahid Services, where can they reach out?
Yeah, they can reach out to us on our website, wahid.com, download the app. They can find my contact details in the description if you'd be kind enough to share.
I will
as
do.
Well.
We'll put that in there.
Yeah.
Abul, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Before we begin, we actually noticed only about 10% of you are subscribed to the podcast. So if you like what you're listening to and you want to hear more from us and see more things Muslim and money related, then please consider subscribing and, of course, leaving this episode a like and share it with your friends. Leave us a comment or a review because it really, really does help us out and help more people to find us. Thank you. Now back to the show.